She moves through shadows on the aircraft carrier, loading Tomahawk missiles with practiced hands. The crew barely notices her, just another figure in naval utilities doing the heavy work nobody wants. When her shirt lifts, revealing the battlefield carved across her back, the Admiral freezes mid-sentence. His face drains of color as recognition dawns. The officers fall silent, suddenly understanding that the woman they have ignored for months carries scars from a classified mission that haunts military leadership to this day. A mission where 38 hostages survived because she didn't. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story captured your interest, please consider subscribing for more untold military stories that deserve to be shared. Lieutenant Commander Zephyrin Adair moved through pre-dawn darkness on the USS Sentinel's deck. The South China Sea air, heavy with salt and tension. Her weathered hands worked efficiently, loading Tomahawk missiles onto the launch rack, a task typically assigned to junior personnel. Each missile weighed nearly 3,000 pounds, yet she handled them with methodical precision that suggested years of experience far beyond this menial assignment. Nearby, a cluster of young officers huddled over steaming coffee cups, their laughter cutting through the morning stillness. "That's her, ballast bitch," Lieutenant Forrester said, voice lowered but still carrying across the deck. "Been here 6 months, barely speaks. Word is she pissed off someone high up in the Pentagon." Lieutenant Commander Holloway snorted. "Why waste someone with rank on grunt work? Must have really screwed up somewhere." Zephyrin never looked up, seemingly deaf to their comments as she continued her work. Her face remained impassive, eyes focused downward, shoulders slightly hunched, as though carrying an invisible weight. A young crewman hurried past, accidentally bumping into her and causing her to stumble. The Tomahawk shifted precariously. She recovered quickly, steadying the missile with practiced hands. The crewman continued without acknowledging her. She was essentially invisible to the crew, a ghost performing necessary but unappreciated labor. Captain Rhodes strode onto the deck, his polished shoes gleaming even in the dim light. He noticed the officer's laughter and frowned. "Do not you have stations to man? Admiral Westergaard arrives in an hour for the tactical briefing." His voice carried the sharp edge of authority. The officers dispersed immediately, but Rhodes barely glanced at Zephyrin as she regained her footing beneath the heavy missile. She was furniture to him, functional but unworthy of notice. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the destroyer, Zephyrin returned to her quarters, Spartan and impersonal, with a single framed photo of a naval ceremony turned face down on the small metal desk. A locked footlocker sat untouched under her bunk, a thin layer of dust suggesting it had not been opened since her arrival. Her uniform jacket hung precisely on a hook, 3 service ribbons partially hidden in shadow, their colors muted in the dim light. She sat on the edge of her bunk, removed her work gloves, and examined her calloused hands. For a brief moment, something flickered behind her eyes, a glimpse of someone else, someone who had once commanded respect rather than indifference. Then it was gone, replaced by the carefully neutral expression she had perfected over the past 6 months. The ship's intercom crackled. "All senior personnel report to the command briefing room at 0800 hours. Zephyrin checked her watch, rose mechanically, and prepared herself for another day of invisibility. The command briefing room hummed with activity as officers filed in, taking their assigned positions around the tactical display table. Admiral Thaddeus Westergaard entered, tall and imposing, with silver hair cropped close to his skull. The room snapped to attention. "At ease," Westergaard said, his voice carrying natural authority that needed no amplification. Captain Rhodes stood proudly at the Admiral's side as digital maps flickered to life on the main screen, showing their current position and planned route. "We are entering a complex tactical environment," Westergaard explained, gesturing to the map where territories claimed by multiple nations overlapped in a web of conflicting colors. "Any provocative action could escalate beyond our control. This is a routine exercise on paper, but make no mistake, we are being watched." Rhodes nodded gravely. "The Sentinel carries the most advanced weapon systems in the Pacific Fleet. Our response time from the threat detection to countermeasure deployment is 90 seconds flat." In the back of the room, Zephyrine attended as the ordnance supervisor, standing against the wall, seemingly blending into it. When Rhodes confidently mischaracterized a weapon system's deployment time frame, her eyes flickered momentarily, a nearly imperceptible reaction. Lieutenant Nasri, the ship's tactical officer, noticed. After Rhodes finished speaking, Nasri cleared his throat. "Sir, I believe there is a 3-minute calibration sequence before deployment on the new targeting system." Rhodes dismissed him with a wave. "I have reviewed the specs thoroughly, Lieutenant. Do not interrupt again." The briefing continued, with Rhodes outlining their mission parameters and Westergaard occasionally interjecting with strategic considerations. Throughout, Zephyrine remained motionless, the perfect picture of a subordinate officer whose only purpose was to absorb information relevant to her limited duties. As the meeting adjourned, officers filed out, returning to their stations with renewed purpose. Nasri approached Zephyrine as she silently made her way back toward the missile bay. "You knew he was wrong, did not you?" he asked, falling into step beside her. She offered nothing but a neutral, "Sir?" "That look. You have handled these systems before, not just loaded them." "Just following procedure manuals, sir." Her voice revealed nothing. Nasri persisted. "Your service record shows you transferred from the USS Artemis. Was not that vessel involved in the classified operations near the Strait of Hormuz?" "Permission to return to duty, sir," she interrupted, her tone remaining respectful but firm. As she walked away, Nasri caught sight of something unusual, a distinctive tattoo partially visible beneath her collar when she turned. It was a symbol he had seen only in intelligence briefings, associated with an elite tactical unit whose operations remained classified even to most naval officers. He watched her disappear around a corner, curiosity piqued despite himself. Later that afternoon, alone in the weapons control room, Zephyrine recalibrated missile tracking systems. Her hands moved with expertise far beyond her supposed role, inputting command sequences with the speed and confidence of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. Through the narrow window, she spotted a foreign vessel appearing on the horizon, too close for comfort, its silhouette distinctive against the darkening sky. She noticed it before the bridge did, her body tensing instinctively as she recognized the vessel class and its capabilities. Without thinking, she reached for the communication panel, then stopped herself, hand hovering over the alert button. This was not her place anymore. She was ordnance crew, nothing more. Reporting tactical observations would raise questions about how she recognized a military vessel at this distance, how she knew its capabilities without consulting reference materials. She lowered her hand and instead completed her assigned tasks, methodically checking each missile's status before logging the information and preparing to return to the deck. As she exited the control room, she nearly collided with Lieutenant Nasri. "Commander Adair," he said, then corrected himself. "Lieutenant Commander, sir." She kept her eyes lowered, but her posture had subtly shifted, a reflex from years of command that she could not entirely suppress. "There is a vessel approaching from the southwest," Nasri said, studying her face. "Chinese frigate, Zhangkai II class. Unusual for them to operate this far from their established patrol routes." It was a test, Zephyrine realized. He was fishing for confirmation that she possessed knowledge beyond her station. "I would not know about patrol routes, sir," she replied carefully. "My concern is ensuring our weapon systems are properly maintained." Nasri smiled slightly. "Of course, though I did not specify it was Chinese. Interesting that you knew that." Before she could respond, the ship's intercom announced elevated readiness status. All personnel were to prepare for possible engagement scenarios. "Duty calls," Nasri said, still watching her with newfound interest. "Perhaps we will continue this conversation later." As he walked away, Zephyrine allowed herself a moment of concern. Lieutenant Nasri was dangerously perceptive. If he continued digging, he might uncover truths that were better left buried, for everyone's sake. The remainder of the day passed in heightened alertness. The foreign vessel maintained its position just outside territorial waters, a silent reminder of the geopolitical tensions that surrounded their mission. Captain Rhodes ordered additional watch rotations and kept the weapon systems on standby. That evening, as Zephyrine completed her shift and headed toward the mess hall, she overheard two junior officers discussing the situation. "My cousin serves on the Nimitz," one said. says there has been increased chatter about possible provocations in this region. Think it will come to anything? The other asked. Who knows? But if it does, I am glad we have got Rhodes. He has seen action before. Zephyrine passed by without comment, but their conversation lingered in her mind. Captain Rhodes was competent enough in standard operations, but if the situation escalated beyond protocol, his rigid adherence to regulations could prove dangerous. Some scenarios required flexibility, improvisation, the willingness to bend rules when lives depended on it. Qualities that had once defined her command style, qualities that had ultimately cost her everything. In the mess hall, she took her usual seat in the corner, alone with her thoughts and a tray of food she barely tasted. Across the room, Admiral Westergaard dined with the senior officers, their conversation animated and punctuated with occasional laughter. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the crowded space. Westergaard paused mid-sentence, a flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossing his features. Then Captain Rhodes said something that recaptured his attention, and the moment passed. Zephyrine finished her meal quickly and returned to her quarters. Tomorrow would bring another day of loading missiles, running diagnostics, and maintaining her careful invisibility. It was not the life she had trained for, had sacrificed for, but it was the life she had chosen after everything else had been taken away. As she prepared for sleep, she allowed herself one indulgence, the only one she permitted. She opened the footlocker, brushing away the accumulated dust, and removed a small, worn notebook. Inside were not personal reflections or memories, but tactical analyses, strategic scenarios, contingency plans for situations exactly like the one they might be facing. She wrote by the dim light of her desk lamp, adding observations about the Chinese vessel, noting its positioning, theorizing about its potential objectives. It was an exercise in futility, she knew. These insights would never reach the bridge, never inform command decisions. Yet she continued because this was who she was, who she would always be, regardless of her title or station. Commander Zephyrine Adair, tactical specialist, expert in asymmetric warfare, veteran of Operation Blackfish, a mission so classified that most who knew of it believed all participants were dead, including, perhaps especially, her. The following morning dawned with an undercurrent of tension running through the USS Sentinel. Overnight, 2 more foreign vessels had joined the first, maintaining positions just outside territorial waters. Their presence was not overtly hostile, but the message was clear. They were being watched, their movements analyzed and reported back to unseen commanders. On the bridge, Captain Rhodes reviewed the situation with his senior officers. "They are testing our resolve," he stated, studying the tactical display, where 3 blinking icons represented the foreign ships. "Standard intimidation tactics. We will maintain course and continue our exercises as planned." Lieutenant Nasri nodded, but his expression revealed concern. "Sir, their positioning suggests coordinated surveillance. The pattern is consistent with pre-engagement protocols." Rhodes dismissed the observation. "They are posturing, nothing more. Admiral Westergaard agrees. We will not be provoked into escalation." As the officers dispersed to their stations, Nasri lingered, waiting until the others had left, before approaching Rhodes privately. "Captain, regarding Lieutenant Commander Adair," he began. Rhodes frowned. "The ordnance officer? What about her?" "I have been reviewing personnel files. Her transfer from the USS Artemis seems unusual. The timing coincides with a classified incident that was never fully explained in official channels. Lieutenant, we have more pressing concerns than administrative irregularities in personnel transfers. Focus on our current tactical situation." Nasri hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." As he left the bridge, Nasri decided to follow his instincts. Something about Zephyrine Adair did not align with her current role. The way she carried herself, her knowledge of systems beyond her purview, the reaction he had observed during the briefing, all pointed to someone with experience and expertise far beyond what her current assignment suggested. He found her in the missile bay, performing routine maintenance checks. She worked methodically, her movements precise and economical, not the actions of someone who had been assigned menial tasks as punishment for incompetence, but rather those of a professional who applied the same standards of excellence regardless of the assignment. "Lieutenant Commander," he said by way of greeting. She acknowledged him with a brief nod, continuing her work. "Lieutenant, the foreign vessels are still with us, 3 now, maintaining formation just beyond the 12-mile limit." Her hands paused almost imperceptibly before resuming their task. "Is that so?" "Captain thinks they are bluffing, just testing our response patterns." "And you?" She did not look up. "I think their positioning is too precise for a simple intimidation exercise. The lead vessel has been gradually adjusting its course, seemingly random corrections, but actually establishing an optimal firing solution." Now she did look up, her eyes meeting his directly. "That is an interesting assessment." "I thought you might find it so." He watched her carefully. "Have you observed similar tactics before, perhaps during your time on the Artemis?" Her expression revealed nothing. "My duties aboard the Artemis were similar to my current assignment. Ordnance management, nothing more." "Of course." He did not believe her, but pressed no further. "Well, I should return to the bridge. Admiral Westergaard will be conducting another inspection this afternoon. Captain wants everything in perfect order." As he turned to leave, he added casually, "By the way, that symbol on your shoulder, the one that looks like a trident crossed with an anchor. Unusual design, Naval Academy?" "Something like that," she replied, returning her attention to the missile components before her. Nasri left, more convinced than ever that Lieutenant Commander Adair was not who her personnel file claimed she was. The afternoon brought sweltering heat to the enclosed spaces of the ship. In the missile deck, the temperature approached uncomfortable levels despite the environmental controls. Zephyrine had spent hours troubleshooting a jammed loading mechanism, the kind of malfunction that could delay deployment in critical situations. She had removed her jacket, working in her t-shirt as sweat beaded on her forehead. The mechanism finally yielded to her persistent efforts, just as the heavy door to the deck swung open unexpectedly. Admiral Westergaard entered with Captain Rhodes, their conversation halting abruptly as they noticed her presence. She turned at the sound, the wrench she had been using slipping from her sweat-slicked hand. As she bent to retrieve it, her shirt pulled up, revealing the lattice of scars across her lower back, extending upward toward her shoulder blades. Not random injury marks, but the distinctive pattern left by a specific type of proximity mine, the kind used exclusively in a classified operation that had become the stuff of whispered legend among naval intelligence. Westergaard froze, color draining from his face. His eyes fixed on the scarring, recognition dawning immediately. "Commander Adair?" His voice barely above a whisper. The deck fell silent. Even the constant mechanical hum of the ship seemed to fade away. "Operation Blackfish," he said softly, speaking an operation name that had not been uttered aloud in years. Zephyrine straightened, retrieving the wrench and slowly turning to face them fully. Gone was the subservient posture, the downcast eyes. She stood at her full height, shoulders square, chin lifted, transformation complete in an instant. "Hello, Admiral." Her voice had changed too. Clear, commanding, no longer muted. "You were reported killed in action," Vestergaard said, disbelief evident in his tone. "Easier than explaining what happened," she replied quietly. "For everyone involved." Captain Rhodes looked bewildered, eyes darting between the Admiral and the woman he had barely noticed for 6 months. "Sir, I do not understand." Vestergaard's demeanor transformed. The stern military man softened, emotion breaking through his professional exterior. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand in a formal salute. "Captain Rhodes," he said, voice gaining strength, "you have Commander Zephyrine Adair on your ship. 7 years ago, she commanded a covert extraction mission in the Strait of Hormuz. When their position was compromised, she used herself as bait to draw enemy fire away from 38 hostages and 14 wounded personnel." The stunned silence deepened as Vestergaard continued. Her tactical deception enabled the rescue craft to escape. She was captured and held for 11 months. He paused, swallowing hard. "The mission remains classified, but the 38 civilians she saved included my daughter." Zephyrine remained stone-faced, her eyes revealing nothing, though something flickered behind them, a shadow of memories better left buried. The Joint Chiefs buried her record after her rescue because her methods violated protocol, but saved everyone. They offered her a quiet discharge. She refused, said if she could not command, she would serve however she could. Rhodes looked stricken. Why was not I informed? Because that was the agreement, Zephyrin finally spoke. I serve, no special treatment, no recognition. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship, the unmistakable signal for battle stations. All three officers instinctively tensed, years of training taking over. Bridge to Admiral Westergaard, the intercom crackled. Multiple vessels approaching rapidly from the east. Recommend immediate return to command. Rhodes moved immediately toward the exit, but paused, looking back at Zephyrin with new eyes, truly seeing her for the first time. Commander, he said, the title acknowledgement of everything he had just learned. Your presence on the bridge would be appreciated. It was not an order, but an invitation, a recognition of her expertise and experience. Zephyrin hesitated only briefly before nodding. After you, Captain. As they made their way rapidly through the ship's corridors, crew members pressed themselves against bulkheads to allow them passage, many doing double takes at the sight of the ordinarily invisible ordnance officer, striding purposefully alongside the captain and admiral. Upon reaching the bridge, they found Lieutenant Nasri coordinating response efforts, his fingers flying across the tactical display. 3 vessels approaching from bearing 095, speed 30 knots. They are ignoring all hails and have activated targeting systems. He looked up as they entered, eyes widening slightly at the sight of Zephyrin, accompanying the senior officers. On screen, Rhodes ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing the approaching ships. They were moving in a formation that suggested coordinated action, their positions allowing overlapping fields of fire. They are jamming our communications, Nasri reported. Satellite uplink is down. Radio limited to short range only. Bring weapon systems online, Rhodes commanded. Prepare countermeasures. As the bridge crew rushed to comply, Zephyrin stood slightly apart, watching the tactical display with intense focus. Her eyes tracked the movements of the approaching vessels, seeing patterns and intentions that others might miss. Admiral Westergaard noticed her concentration. Commander Adair, he said formally, your assessment? Rhodes began to object, but stopped himself, perhaps remembering what he had just learned about her background. Zephyrin stepped forward, all pretense of deference gone. She moved to the tactical display, studying it for several seconds before speaking. They are hurting us, she said quietly, but with absolute authority. Their formation is not attack-oriented. They are channeling us toward the shoals where their land-based systems have coverage. Her finger traced lines across the display. Here, here, and here, they are creating a corridor, forcing us to either retreat or enter their trap. Rhodes frowned. How can you be certain? Because I have seen this before, she replied. It is the same flanking technique used in the Hormuz incident. They do not want direct confrontation. They want to force us into a position where we have no good options, where any action we take can be portrayed as aggression. The bridge fell silent as her words sank in. Even those who had no knowledge of Operation Blackfish could sense the weight of experience behind her assessment. Rhodes studied the display again, seeing it now through the lens of her explanation. The pattern became clear, a subtle but deliberate manipulation of their available navigation options. What do you recommend? He asked, the question a tacit acknowledgement of her expertise. For a brief moment, Zephyrin seemed surprised by the request, as though she had become so accustomed to being ignored that being consulted felt alien. Then her training took over. The commander she had once been emerging fully from, beneath the carefully constructed facade of the past 6 months. We adjust course 15 degrees starboard, but make it appear as though we are maintaining current trajectory. Simultaneously, we initiate a false communications burst, suggesting we are calling for reinforcements. Her hands moved confidently across the tactical display. They will read the signal even through the jamming. Then we deploy passive sonar buoys here and here, creating the impression we are establishing a defensive perimeter. She looked up, meeting Rhodes's eyes directly. They believe they have the advantage because they think we do not see their strategy. We turn that against them. Rhodes considered her proposal. It was unorthodox, deceptive rather than directly confrontational, but it addressed the true nature of the threat they faced. After a moment, he nodded. Make it happen, he ordered. The bridge erupted into coordinated activity as Rhodes relayed the plan to his officers. Zephyrine stepped back, watching as her strategy was implemented, her expression betraying nothing of what she must be feeling at this unexpected return to a role she had thought forever lost to her. Admiral Vestergaard moved to stand beside her, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "You never stopped being a commander, did you? Even loading missiles in obscurity, you were still analyzing, strategizing, preparing." She met his gaze steadily. "Some things become part of who you are. They cannot be taken away, only hidden." He nodded, understanding. "When this is over, we need to talk about your future. The agreement may have satisfied the Joint Chiefs, but it has deprived the Navy of one of its finest tactical minds. That ends today." Before she could respond, Lieutenant Nasri called out from his station. "Sir, the vessels are altering course. They appear to be reassessing their approach." The bridge of the USS Sentinel hummed with renewed purpose as Zephyrine strategy unfolded. The false communications burst had been transmitted, the passive sonar buoys deployed in a pattern suggesting defensive preparations. Now they waited, every officer intent on their instruments, monitoring the approaching vessels for any change in behavior. "They are slowing," Lieutenant Nasri reported, his voice calm but edged with tension. "Lead vessel is adjusting course, 2 degrees north." Rhodes nodded, eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Continue as planned, maintain our adjusted heading, but keep the appearance of our original course." Zephyrine stood slightly apart, her posture that of an observer rather than a participant. Yet her presence had subtly altered the dynamics of the bridge. Officers occasionally glanced her way, as though seeking confirmation or approval of their actions. "Second vessel is altering course as well," Nasri continued. "They appear to be reassessing their approach." Admiral Westergaard, who had remained silent throughout the implementation of Zephyrine's plan, now moved to stand beside Rhodes. "They detected our communication burst." "As intended," Rhodes confirmed. Commander Adair predicted they would interpret it as a call for reinforcements. The use of her proper rank was not lost on the bridge crew. Whispers had already begun to circulate through the ship, fragments of information about Operation Blackfish, about the woman who had spent months loading missiles in obscurity while possessing tactical expertise that might now save them all. "All 3 vessels are now adjusting course," Nasri reported. "They are breaking formation, moving to establish a wider perimeter." Zephyrine took a step forward, studying the display intently. "They believe we are aware of their intentions. They are reassessing." For several tense minutes, the bridge remained silent except for the necessary communications between officers manning their stations. Then, gradually, the pattern on the tactical display began to change. "Lead vessel is increasing distance," Nasri said. "Second and third are following suit. They are withdrawing to beyond the 12-mile limit." A collective release of breath swept through the bridge. Not quite relief, but the easing of immediate tension. "They are saving face," Zephyrine explained quietly, maintaining the fiction that this was merely a routine patrol that happened to cross our path. "They will not risk confrontation if they believe reinforcements are en route." Rhodes turned to her, his expression a mixture of respect and lingering disbelief. "Your assessment was accurate in every detail." She acknowledged his words with a slight nod, her demeanor still reserved despite the validation of her expertise. Years of practiced invisibility were not easily discarded. "Stand down from heightened alert," Rhodes ordered. "Maintain standard surveillance protocols. I want hourly reports on the positions of those vessels." As the bridge crew returned to normal operations, Rhodes gestured for Zephyrine and Admiral Westergaard to join him in the adjacent briefing room. Once the door closed behind them, Rhodes turned to face Zephyrine directly. "I owe you an apology, Commander," he said formally. "For 6 months, I have had one of the Navy's finest tactical officers loading missiles on my ship, and I failed to recognize it." "That was the intention, Captain," she replied. "Invisibility was part of the arrangement." "An arrangement that has cost us dearly," Vestergaard interjected. "Your insights just prevented a potential international incident. How many similar situations have arisen during your time in, shall we say, reduced circumstances?" The question hung in the air, highlighting the waste of her talents over the past months, perhaps years. "The Joint Chiefs made their decision based on the information available to them," Zephyrine said diplomatically. "Operation Blackfish violated direct orders. The fact that it succeeded does not change that reality. Rhodes frowned. Admiral, perhaps you could enlighten me about the details of this operation. My security clearance should be sufficient. Vestergaard exchanged a glance with Zephyrin, silently seeking permission. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. 7 years ago, Vestergaard began, Commander Adair was tasked with extracting a diplomatic delegation that had been taken hostage during negotiations in a volatile region. The orders were to wait for additional forces before attempting extraction. Intelligence suggested the hostages would be moved within 24 hours to a location beyond our reach. He paused, his expression darkening with the memory. Commander Adair made the decision to proceed with extraction, using only the resources at her immediate disposal. She designed and executed a tactical deception that drew enemy forces away from the hostages, allowing their evacuation while she and a small team engaged the hostile elements directly. The plan succeeded, Zephyrin continued, her voice flat, recounting facts rather than seeking sympathy. All 38 hostages were extracted safely. 14 military personnel sustained injuries but survived. My team was presumed lost. You were captured, Rhodes said, understanding dawning. She nodded once. For 11 months, details of that period are not relevant to the current situation. The briefing room fell silent as Rhodes absorbed this information. And after your eventual rescue, instead of recognition for saving 38 lives, you were effectively demoted and hidden away. The operation violated direct orders, she repeated. Regardless of the outcome, such actions could not be seen to be rewarded or even tacitly approved. The Joint Chiefs offered a discharge with full benefits. I declined. Why? Rhodes asked, genuinely puzzled. After such treatment, why continue to serve? For the first time, emotion flickered across her face, a brief glimpse of the passion that drove her. Because this is who I am. If I could not serve as a commander, I would serve in whatever capacity was permitted. Vestergaard placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of understanding and respect. That ends today. Captain Rhodes, I am officially reassigning Commander Adair as Tactical Executive Officer of the USS Sentinel, effective immediately. Rhodes nodded his agreement. I would be honored to have her expertise officially recognized. Admiral, Zephyrin began, a note of caution in her voice. The Joint Chiefs will receive my personal recommendation, Vestergaard finished firmly, along with a detailed report of how your tactical assessment just prevented a potential conflict. It is time for Operation Blackfish to be re-examined in the light of its actual results rather than its technical violations. Before she could respond, the ship's intercom crackled. Captain to the bridge, foreign vessels are returning to territorial waters. The three officers exchanged glances before quickly returning to the bridge. Lieutenant Nasri looked up as they entered. Sir, all 3 vessels have withdrawn completely. They are returning to their home port based on their current heading. Well done, everyone, Rhodes said, addressing the bridge crew. Stand down from alert status but maintain standard surveillance protocols. As the tension on the bridge dissipated, Rhodes turned to Zephyrin. Commander Adair, please work with Lieutenant Nasri to prepare a complete tactical analysis of this encounter. I want your insights on record. Yes, sir, she replied, the formal acknowledgement of a direct order from her commanding officer, feeling both strange and familiar after so long. As she moved to join Nasri at the tactical station, the lieutenant greeted her with newfound respect. Commander, I suspected there was more to your background than was apparent. That tattoo, the one visible beneath your collar, it is associated with Naval Special Warfare Development Group. She neither confirmed nor denied his observation, but her slight smile was answer enough. I would be interested to hear your analysis of their formation patterns, Nasri continued. The precision of their movements suggested extensive preparation. Likely they had been studying our patrol routes for weeks, she agreed, falling easily into the role of tactical officer. The positioning of their vessels indicated a thorough understanding of our standard response protocols. As they worked, other bridge officers occasionally approached with questions or observations, each interaction reinforcing her new, or rather restored, position within the ship's hierarchy. The woman who had been invisible for so long was now at the center of the Sentinel's operations, her expertise sought and valued. Hours later, as the ship settled into its night routine, Zephyrine found herself alone on the observation deck, watching the moonlight play across the dark waters. The events of the day had altered her circumstances so completely that she had not yet fully processed the change. Admiral Vestergaard joined her, his approach deliberately audible to avoid startling her. "You should be resting, Commander. It has been an eventful day." "Old habits," she replied. "After months of invisibility, sleep seems less important than savoring this moment of, I suppose, recognition." Vestergaard leaned against the railing beside her. "The Joint Chiefs are reconsidering your case," he said without preamble. "Captain Rhodes has formally requested you be permanently assigned as Tactical Executive Officer." She did not respond immediately, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "You never told them, did you?" she finally asked. "That you knew it was your daughter on that extraction?" Vestergaard's eyes widened slightly. "No," he admitted. "Just as you never told anyone you recognized her face in the briefing materials, that you changed the entire mission parameter when you realized who was among the hostages." "Some weights we carry alone, Admiral." "Not anymore," he replied, reaching into his pocket and withdrawing a commander's insignia. He held it out to her. "Some people never ask for recognition, but deserve more than anyone else." As she accepted the insignia, her expression shifted subtly. The weight she had carried for years did not disappear entirely. Such burdens never do. But it lightened enough that she stood straighter, breathed deeper. "What happens now?" she asked. "That is up to you, Commander," Vestergaard replied. "But whatever you decide, you no longer have to be invisible." The ship's intercom interrupted their conversation, calling all senior officers to an emergency briefing. Intelligence had reported increased activity in the region, suggesting further tests of their resolve might be imminent. "It seems your tactical expertise will be needed sooner rather than later," Vestergaard observed as they made their way toward the briefing room. "Good," Zephyrine replied, a hint of the commander she had always been shining through. "I have spent enough time loading missiles. It is time to decide when and where they might actually be needed." The following morning, Commander Adair walked the deck in proper uniform, the gold insignia catching the early light. The same junior officers who had mocked her now stood at attention as she passed. Lieutenant Forrester, who had coined the cruel nickname, swallowed hard as she approached. "Commander," he acknowledged, his voice tight with embarrassment for his previous behavior. "Lieutenant," she replied evenly, neither acknowledging nor dismissing his discomfort. Her focus was on the tasks ahead, not the slights of the past. As she moved through the ship, heading toward the bridge for her first official shift as Tactical Executive Officer, she noticed the whispers that followed her were different now. Stories of Operation Blackfish, of 11 months in captivity, of tactical brilliance that saved lives when protocol would have abandoned them. Lieutenant Nasri fell into step beside her as she approached the bridge. "Commander, the tactical team is assembled in the briefing room. We are ready when you are." She nodded, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Let us proceed." As she entered the briefing room, the assembled officers rose to attention, their expressions reflecting a mixture of curiosity and respect. These were men and women who had barely acknowledged her existence a day ago. Now they looked to her for guidance, for the expertise they now understood she possessed. "At ease," she said, moving to the head of the table where the tactical display awaited. "We have work to do." She activated the display, bringing up the current positioning of vessels throughout the region. Her hands moved with confidence, navigating the system, with the ease of someone returning to a familiar home after a long absence. "Our recent encounter was not an isolated incident," she began. "It was a test, a probing of our defenses and response patterns. We can expect similar challenges in the days ahead." The officers listened attentively as she outlined her assessment of the regional situation, identifying potential flashpoints and suggesting modified patrol routes that would maintain their presence while reducing opportunities for provocation. "Questions?" she asked when she had finished. A young ensign raised his hand tentatively. "Commander, is it true that you survived 11 months in enemy captivity after Operation Blackfish?" Zephyrine regarded him steadily. "The details of that operation remain classified, Ensign. But I will say this, there are some experiences that change you fundamentally, that strip away everything except what truly matters. For me, What matters is this ship and its crew, and ensuring that we complete our mission without unnecessary risk." The ensign nodded, satisfied with her response, even though it had not directly answered his question. "Any tactical questions?" she clarified, a hint of dry humor in her tone. The briefing continued, focusing on operational matters rather than her personal history. By its conclusion, it was clear that Commander Adair had fully assumed her role as the ship's tactical expert, her transition from invisible ordnance officer to respected senior commander complete. As the officers filed out, Captain Rhodes entered, nodding approval at what he had observed. "The crew is fortunate to have your expertise, Commander, myself included." "Thank you, Captain," she replied. "It feels good to be useful again." "You were always useful," he corrected, "just not in the way that best served this ship or the Navy. That mistake has been rectified." Together they walked to the bridge where the day's operations awaited. Through the forward windows, the horizon stretched endlessly, a reminder of the vastness in which their small vessel operated, and the countless challenges that might lie ahead. For the first time in years, Zephyrine faced that horizon not as a shadow, but as herself. The weight of her past still present but no longer crushing, the scars on her back a testament to what she had endured and the lives she had saved. Some heroes remain in shadow by choice, carrying burdens so others do not have to. But sometimes those shadows lift, revealing the strength that was always there, waiting to be recognized.